guys, if you think about your sensory systems, most people are aware of the big five, okay? You can think, if you close your eyes and think, okay, what's he talking about? You're talking about your touch, smell, taste, your vision, your hearing. There, is that five? Did I get all five? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. Okay, so those are the big five everyone thinks about. Now, you can have kids who have very sensitive to that. So they mightn't like bright lights. They mightn't like things too loud. It's called auditory defensiveness. So a little, like that little cup, a little bit of sound, okay? Too much sound? Oh, no, it's just overwhelming. We don't like that at all. Okay, so every sensory system, our guys usually have, they'll have a small, like espresso size cup, or they can have a medium sized cup, like a tall latte. That's neurotypical folks. So you can cope with quite a lot of sensory input, but you feel pretty calm and relaxed most of the time. It's not dysregulating, okay? Now, you can have kids who have a very, very big, like Frappuccino size cup as well. They're my sensory seekers. Not only is it a big cup, but that cup has holes in it. So it takes an awful lot of sensory input to fill up that cup. And they're happiest when the cup is full to the top and not overflowing. But these guys need a lot of sensory input to feel calm and relaxed. But they're also, if their cup's not filled up, they want to make it full. So they'll take things from the environment. They'll grind their teeth, they'll chew their fingernails, or digitally stim, or use their eyes, or make noise. They'll do something to try and fill that cup up. So your job is try and keep that cup filled up. Okay. In terms of sensory, your sensory systems are just how you interact and perceive the world around you. We mentioned the 5 main sensory systems. So you can be sensitive or seeking in any of those. But then we have 3 that are really, really, really important for AST and important for sensory processing. It's kind of the more clinical ones. It's the only big words we use really too much about this. So we have what's called the proprioceptive system. So proprioception is really, really important. That's probably the most important word to remember. If you remember nothing else about my talk, remember proprioception. Proprioception just means your feeling of strength and power. Is your muscular sense. It's kind of derived through these little receptors in the joints, between all your muscles, between every joint, that measures tension and effort and stress in the joints, okay? A lot of my young guys, the most common presentation is sensory seeking proprioceptive. These are what I affectionately call my hard charging boys. They want to move a lot. They're always on the go. They're either fidgeting or squirming in their seat, or sometimes it can also kind of overlap with quite a low body awareness and modulation as well. So they tend to do everything very heavy. So even their footsteps, even when they play with little kids, they can be quite strong, quite effortful, sometimes playing too hard. They do everything really strong. These guys also love heavy pressures. They love big squeezy hugs. They lean into people. They just seek this kind of heavy, effortful push, pull, tumble, crash sensations, okay? So that's my sensory seeking proprioceptive guys, all right? Then the next one that's important to think about, it's called vestibular, the vestibular sense. Vestibular is your movement and balance sense. Many of our kids of spinning and swinging. There's a reason that you'll see swings in almost all OT rooms. That's because of this. Those are the 2 really important ones that you remember, that you might be familiar with. And then the last of those 3 is called tactile, which is just touch. It's one of the ones we're familiar with. But for us, it's a specific sort of tactile called tactile input and DPT, or deep pressure sensation. It's the reason Lycra and compression garments are so popular. It's also the reason you'll find quite a lot of our guys in the spectrum really love swimming pools and water play, because when you get in the swimming pool, you'll have the whole weight of the pool squeezing your body. It's a lovely sensation. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with a lady called Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin's kind of like a hero in the ASD community, but she was one of the first people that drew attention to this with the idea of the squeeze machine. She invented this little thing. It was like a hug machine. Use them for cows where she worked, and she would get in after the cows and be squeezed by them. So it's that deep pressure touch sensation. Okay, so that's the broad area of sensory. It's how you experience the world around you. For a lot of young people on the spectrum, if they have sensory processing differences, not disorders just yet, but differences, then they just feel things. The world seems different to them than it does to a neurotypical person. Now, I purposely didn't say different than it does to you, because there's no people who are normal in the sensory sense. Everyone has their own preferences. You might be someone who does their best work when you're in a coffee shop and you have loud noises around you and you like that busy environment. Other people can't work there at all, and they need to be in a library where it's super, super quiet, and they get overwhelmed if there's too much going on. Everyone has their own sensory preferences. It becomes a problem. It becomes sensory processing disorder when it stops you doing the things you need and want to do. So does it become an issue? If it's in the classroom and you can't listen to what the teacher's saying because you're moving so much, if you're hurting your friends because you can't gauge the amount of force you're using in your muscles, if you can't sleep at night because you can't turn down the system, that's now disordered. The definition of something to be a disability, does it stop you doing the things you need and want to do? If so, you are by definition disabled by that thing. A lot of parents, this is one thing when I do these talks, I've done these for big conferences, and when I ask people, do you have any questions? No one asks this, but at least usually between like 4 and 10 people will come up the end. They stay behind to ask it. And they'll say, will my child grow out of sensory processing issues? That's that's the huge question everyone's thinking about, but no one asks until they ask by themselves. So I bring it up straight away now. Now, there's 2 answers to that. They generally don't grow out of it, but they do grow into it very beautifully. So if you have a sensory seeking, very energetic young person, that can stop being a problem when they're able to meet their sensory needs. They might still be a physical boy and they might get into playing rugby and they might find other ways to meet their sensory needs, but it stops being a barrier to their success. So they're able to play with their friends and able to pay attention in class. It's how you can turn this thing around and make it from something that was really overwhelming and really bothersome and getting in the way of their happiness, really. Then you can meet their sensory needs, keep their little cup filled up so they feel calm and organized, ready for action. And then you can move forward, and in that time, something that was previously a big barrier to success, now if you can actually help them and meet their sensory needs, it can make them more calm and more attentive, more happy and more ready to learn. Now, this is beautiful because it brings me nicely to the purpose of this is it sensory as a behavior? I see the role of OT, especially sensory OTs, is can I get this young person to the classroom or to the playground and they're ready to learn? They're calm, organized, and available for learning. One of the things you'll see an awful when I do classroom observations, you'll have teachers or behavioral therapists trying really, really hard. I mean, they're like killing themselves trying so hard. But this young person has got their sensory armor up against the world. And they're just not, their ears aren't screwed on. Everything the teacher or behavioral therapist is trying to get across is just bouncing off this sensory bubble, this armor they have up against the world. So it's like they're not available for the learning that's going on. So if you can put down that armor, and you've got to get them to drop that armor, you've got to get through that little sensory bubble, then the young person will go, where's this been my whole life? And suddenly feel more calm, more available. It opens the door to whatever you're going to do next. They're now ready to listen to whatever you've got to say. Okay. Any questions? I seen a few little chats coming up there, but I wasn't really paying attention to it.
I think that was me chatting away. So so sensory needs change based on context, right? Like Abdullah would sometimes switch up the lights all the time, maybe for a whole week. Then maybe for another 2 days, he wants all the lights on, off, on and off. So you could be hypo and hyper at different times. And what contributes to this? Why does it change? Is it something?
This will drive you bonkers too. And this is really funny when you see junior therapists or newly qualified therapists, when they be really prescriptive and say, your child needs this and this and this and this. And like they know exactly what's up. I'm like, word. I think you're going to make a fool of yourself because the child's constantly changing. In fact, they change on a load of factors, depending on if there's changes going on at home. Big ones is, are they sleeping okay and are they eating okay? Those are two big factors that will change. How old are they? What they can be. You can have a really solid sensory diet. I love my sensory diets. I spend a lot of time doing everything correctly, and this is working really well for like 5 years. And then when the child hits adolescence, just neurological fireworks display going on in their brain right then. The amount of cortisol and stress hormone and testosterone bouncing around there is going to change how they perceive the world. The main thing that changes, that affects the sensory presentation of your child, is your child, because they are never static. In fact, you don't want them to be. A child is an engine for learning and development that is constantly changing. 600 neural connections per second. Your child's brain looks demonstrably different when they go to sleep at bed than when they woke up that morning. And that's normal. That's the way it should be. So they're always, always changing. So the trick is not to find the one solution that will work for your child. It's to try and understand their sensory presentation wholly. So if you look for little signs, there's little physiological signs you can look out for about like their breathing and heart rate, their skin, like called galvanic skin response, which is like their heat or sweatiness, their muscle tone. And you can even, get very, very good at reading your child and thinking, oh, I think he seems a little bit anxious or sensory seeking. Maybe we'll try this. And then maybe we'll try and bring him down with this more calming sensory input. You'll find what his preferences are, and they're specific to your child as well. There's some, like, you can have a good idea from something like a sensory profile. You can have a good idea what to start off with, but then you adapt them to that specific kid. But the lovely thing is it's child-led. The child will let you know what works. So they'll be able to inform you, and it's very much a collaboration. The child their behavior and response will tell you all you need to know. And then you just kind of between you work out the best little solution going forward then. But yeah, the change is an awful, awful lot, but that's not a bad thing. It just means, okay, today is different. So what do I need to do differently? This is a very important point, that because it's child-led, you never do it to the child. You always do it with the child. So for example, some people might have seen things like body brushing. You know, the body brush thing, very, very popular. It's called the Will Barker Protocol. It's the proper name. And I've seen kids having that done to them against their will. So the kid was like, get off me, and squiggly and try and get away. And the parent or therapist is almost crying, going, it's for your own good, and brushing them and holding them down to do it. It's like, no, it should never look like that. It should always be something, if the child's not engaging with it, let it go. Don't fight that battle. It's not something you're going to do like force on them. Never, ever, ever. It's badly done if you ever see that done. Okay.
Yeah, because if he's not engaging with it, then obviously his body doesn't need it at that point in time. You know, there are times when we start brushing Abdullah and he says no, and we stop. Then later he comes and takes the brush himself and starts to do it. So he needs it. And I think at the end of the day, we want to take our kids to a level whereby they become independent and self-regulating themselves. Not always have to, because imagine brushing a 20 or 30-year-old child. I mean, that's not what we want to do. And I think we really want to make the children independent and all this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
She says, my son stays in a dark room. Is this part of a sensory issue?
Very much so. So your son sounds like, I was going to read your name there, but I'm afraid I might mispronounce it. But yes. Where am I? Kikalomo?
Yeah, right.
Yes, excellent. Okay, Kiko. Well, lovely to hear. Thank you so much for your comment. Yes, very much. In fact, if your son chooses to do that, that's actually a great sign that he's choosing to remove himself from something that's overstimulating or feels challenging for him, and he has some place to go. What's really important about that, and this is something that's forgotten in a lot of the sensory literature and training, is choice. He feels he's in control, that if he's overwhelmed, there's somewhere he can choose to go. And even if he doesn't feel overwhelmed, the knowledge that is available to him can be really, really useful. So then you can even do things like social stories, like, well, try this. This person's coming over for a visit. We're going to do this thing for 30 minutes. So you can make sure it's all very, very clear. But if you need to, if you're feeling upset, use something like the alert program, or like a little engine. I don't know if you have seen the alert program before. Or a little emoji cards that says, if I feel upset, this is where we can go. We can go and escape to this dark room sort of place. And it's a place where you can control. What's important to notice about that, it's a dark room. Most sensory rooms should be like this. There's an option to make it totally dark because it limits all of that competing information getting in. It turns all of that off so he has a chance to decompress. It sounds like a boy like that has a very small sensory cup, like a little espresso cup. So it overfills very, very easily. So what he wants to do when he's feeling overwhelmed, stop anything going into that cup, go into the dark room, no sights, no sounds, no people. Then he'll be able to stabilize and be able to regulate himself much, much better. It's also great because if he's very, very overwhelmed, if you go to the dark room, that's a great place to do a little bit of work with them. For example, when you're in the dark room, you can do some deep pressure touch, some joint compression, roll them underneath a peanut ball or an exercise ball, all that good stuff. But yeah, it can be very, very helpful, but it's also, this is tricky as well because there's a bit of a tendency for kids who are hypersensitive like that to always run, to almost avoid anything that's stressful. But you don't really want to do that either. You want to just try and gradually increase his level of comfort with the thing that's making him stressed out. So you can always go back to the dark room, but we'll try and do this. And pairing it with something he enjoys, for example, it's a common one I get all the time is hair cutting. Kids don't like getting their hair cut, or wearing headphones is another one. It's a nightmare. So I want to pair that. I know that's going to be difficult. So I want to do it in little baby steps and pair it with something that I know he enjoys that is a preferred sort of activity as well. So there's always a solution to it.
Yeah, and I always say if it's not causing him harm or inhibiting him from, living his normal life, then so be it. Because there are adults that actually stay in dark rooms anyway, most times of the day if they're not doing something. So I think we need to look at it from the aspect of, is it helping him? Is it causing him harm? If it's not causing him harm, then just let him be, yeah?
Very, very good point, because that's something, bringing it back to the sensory behavior part, remind me, I will get one of the things OTs and ABA therapists, I love ABA. I know some amazing ABA therapists, but one of the things OTs and ABAs used to always bump heads about was stimming. Stimming was the battleground we fought over, because behavioral therapists for the longest time would say, it looks weird, stop them doing it. And just use behavioral interventions. For example, a child was flapping their hands, digitally stimming, moving their fingers in an odd way that wasn't the same as the other kids. Okay, hands in the pockets, or he would sit on his hands just so he couldn't engage in that behavior. But that doesn't actually address why he's doing it in the first place. So he's trying to fill his cup up. If you stop him doing this one, you're going to see it pop up somewhere else, guaranteed. So this is why I a lot of the time get kids coming from ABA who are now not digital stimming, but maybe they're biting themselves, or grinding their teeth, or doing something that's even more intense because they couldn't do this first one and you didn't replace it. You just said no. And the one thing you can very rarely do effectively is just say no. You've got to compartmentalize it. You've got to replace it with something else, some other type of thing. So it's something that's bothersome or loud or disruptive in the classroom. Find something you can do that's functional in that environment. It's not harming anybody else. And then carry on with that. So it is worthwhile to address, for example, if you have a kid who's engaging in some sort of STEM behaviors, they're not hurting themselves, but maybe it's very stigmatizing, or maybe it's something that makes the other kids in school feel odd. And this child really wants to make friends. So now suddenly, it is valuable to think about that. But it's in and of itself, if it's not harmful, it's not getting in the way of the learning and development, I would say let it go, because all STEM serve a purpose. I had a young lady back in Ireland, one of my first new grad clients I ever had, and her STEM was punching herself in the face as hard as she could and did it nonstop. In fact, she blinded herself in one eye because she punched herself in the face so much. And this looks like the most crazy behavior. Like, why would you do that? It served a purpose for her. She was so overwhelmed.
There's actually a question like that, coincidentally, which is good, but about someone hitting a 12-year-old hitting his head. But before then, Adam, would you want to take the questions so that you can read them off yourself? Can you see the chat?
Sure, yeah. Hold on, let me jump back up here.
I think the next one is a 4-year-old who eats only cereals. He can't stand the feel of anything in his mouth.
Where's that? Who had that one?
Halima Bello. She sent it to 20.
Oh, I have a couple of them, Halima, here. Oh yeah, here we go. A lot of these hit close to home. My 4-year-old son eats only cereals. He can't stand the feel of anything in his mouth, though he's tolerating toothbrushing better. Yeah. Okay, so he's 4, so he's pretty early, so there's lots of time left. The longer these behave, okay, I'm going to use Halima. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use your case as a way to teach the very thing we're talking about here today, or supposed to be, before I went off on a tangent. So is this a sensory thing or is it a behavioral thing? You started off doing something because he had an aversion to the sensation of certain, could be tastes or feels or texture or heat or difference or color or lots of different things that when he experienced something that wasn't cereal, something that was unfamiliar or novel, as we call it, then his brain will go, nope, I don't know that thing. I don't like that thing. Let's not do that thing. So it's when he experiences for the first time, his brain will go, how do we feel about this brain? Like, have you ever seen the movie Inside Out? There's little people in his brain like that. The people in his brain will go, how do we feel about this? Is this like a little, what were they? Like little yellow balls were the good ones and blue balls were the bad ones. But he experiences it and goes, do we like this? Do we not like it? And in that moment, he'll say, okay, anything that's not cereal, we don't like that. Goes in the bad box. And as soon as we feel that, it's gone. So he has decided we don't like this thing. So because there was a sensory difference there, so it was a sensory foundation. But now you're going to see behavior, psychology, and habit start to build on top of that original sensory decision. So then he will continue to avoid things that aren't cereal because that's what he's always done in the past. He's only 4, so it's not too hardwired yet. But I have worked with a boy who was, how old is he? When I seen him, he was 17. He must be like 20 now. And the only thing he had eaten for 8 years was McDonald's chicken nuggets. One food item, 8 years. And because that was so hardwired, he had never eaten anything else. The mom would try and like get vitamin bags and stuff into him, but that's so hardwired now. Yes, it had a sensory beginning, but then the behavior, psychology, and habit is so laid down. It's so hardwired and papered over that it's going to be hard to actually dig down to the sensory basis of that. So there's a program you can check out online. There's a bunch of these. The term to use is called Fun with Food programs. If you look on Pinterest, if you're not on Pinterest, get yourself on there. Or actually, Instagram is pretty good for this now as well. But even go on Instagram or Pinterest and Google Autism Fun with Food or feeding programs. Because the whole idea is when you're trying to overcome this sensory and the behavior element on top of it, you want to, when he experiences something, you have a moment before he decides, I like this, I don't like it. You have to get in there and sort of confuse his system a little bit. So before he puts it in the box saying, I don't like this thing, you want to get it into the box that says, okay, it's okay. I'm going to give it a try for a few seconds. It's just getting in the door. That's the hard part. As we play games with food and we do things so it doesn't feel like his thing he has negative association with. So the food, it doesn't take place at the table. It doesn't take place in a foodie sort of environment where he's already got his guard up against anything new. So the idea of our kid who only eats cereals and then you're at the same dinner table, then you try and get him to eat a piece of broccoli or something. Good luck. You're going to need some pretty strong motivators. And even then he might well gag, he might well get sick. That happens quite a lot in OT sessions. Instead, you want to try and get him to familiarize himself with this new experience, but frame it in a positive way where he doesn't have this fight or flight cortisol heavy reaction where his brain goes, nope. Because as soon as his brain decides we don't like this thing, you are not going to like overcome that initial cognitive reaction. Train has left the station. You cannot get it back. So it's more, okay, how do we gently work towards this where he's okay with this now? All right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does. It does to me, though. So is it a sort of desensitizing it? So
it's desensitizing it. Yes, that's part of it. But it's desensitizing it where imagine like you're trying to get around his. Oh, is someone talking there? Was that my lady in question? Someone's microphone was on. But what I was going to say is imagine like I use martial arts metaphors a lot. I do a lot of martial arts. So I'm a big martial arts guy. Like a heavyweight boxer and you're just trying to beat down his defenses. You're trying to fight him where he's strongest and get into this just war. Nope. avoid that entirely. He's got his defensives up. So I'm going to do like jujitsu type stuff. I'm going to get around it. I'm not going to fight where he's strongest. I'm going to get by his defenses very easily without any effort, and then I'll be successful. So it's don't pick the battles you want to fight. And if he's fighting tooth and nail, if he's really resisting it, a lot of the time, especially if it's a kid, for example, who have almost like compulsive like behaviors, and you're saying, no, you have to eat this, and you're that old school pure behavioral approach, the only thing you're really doing there is shining a spotlight on that and making him hyper aware of his feelings about this thing. So it's not, I need to be careful about that. I would always say, do this child-led way. Try and do baby steps forward. Start where he is, what he will accept, and then just you try and build from that on. That's where you overcome an awful lot of these aversions, whether it's cutting hair or brushing teeth or cutting fingernails or water in the face. There's tons and tons of them, and they're all about baby steps forward and then trying to gently overcome and make it a positive experience. So then when he has this experience again, his initial response in his brain isn't panic, 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 fight or flight, because that, if you're Googling things, Google your brain's fight or flight response, and the way you go from his higher order brain up here, his thinking brain, as soon as he gets into that fight or flight response, that all shuts off. And all the thinking goes down to the lower brain, which isn't good at thinking. It's only good at saying, no, 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 get me out of here. I'm not doing this thing. So you have to keep him up here. Keep him in his upstairs brain. Don't let him go to his downstairs brain. Got to keep him up here. And if he does go downstairs, you can't fight that. You've got to wait till he comes back up to meet you up here again. Okay, if you want a little bit of extra reading, Lodi, you might have it already. It was very popular. There's a book called The Whole Brain Child, which is very, very applicable to that whole area. It's very excellent. It's very short, and a lot of my parents really like it. Okay, let me go back to the questions, guys. Yeah. Because I know I tend to answer quite long.
A 7-year-old who hates the sound of crying, especially his younger ones, probably sound of maybe younger kids. Was it a major cause or was it,
get that all the time as well. So that's called auditory defensiveness. I'm wondering a couple of things about this. Okay, so if you are still on here, Baba Gana, hey, I'm getting good at this, Baba Gana. So if you're still on here, I'm going to ask some more questions. Feel free to answer in the little talk thing. Is it just one specific noise? Is it one person crying? Any loud noises? And if it is all loud noises, is it also loud noises that he's making himself? Again, this gets into the control part. So a lot of my kids who are auditory defensive are totally happy, gang, 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 banging pots and pans and shouting and screaming and slamming doors of themselves. But if it's other people making the noise, or like a fire alarm or a vacuum cleaner or a washing machine, then they can sometimes find that really objectionable. So a couple of things you can do. You can increase his tolerance of that thing, so making him okay with the noise of the baby crying. Okay, and this is something you do with exposure. And then I would actually even I would record whatever the sound is, so record the other person crying. Don't make your child cry to record them, but the next time they cry, record that thing. And then you're going to gradually play that using a social story about this happens, we're still okay. If you're used to social stories, they work really well. Google Carol Gray social stories. There's these little egghead people, then they're great. But that's one thing, increase his tolerance. 2, can you adapt the environment where he has something to do? So if this noise does happen, he has choices. He can remove himself. He can go to his own room. He can maybe have headphones where he puts the headphones over his ears real quick, and that reduces the noise of this. Okay, so there's elements of choice in that as well. So improve his own tolerance for it, adapt the environment where he has some way of avoiding it. And then the last one is that you adapt the environment, which is the thing itself. So it's the volume of the other child, but you can't really do that in this case. So that's the approach I would have. Definitely want choice involved. Leave the room or have headphones, and then also increase his own tolerance to this as well. Okay. So did I get an answer there? Is it every loud noise, or is it just?
Yeah. So one from my 14-year-old son has mild intellectual disability from Pfizer.
Yeah. And ADD. He chews on his clothes and similar objects. Also break breadsticks, toothpicks, and shreds paper or tissue a lot. Makes him into something to play with or arranges the sticks and toothpicks. Part of sensory issue. Yeah. So it definitely has a sensory basis, but it also is a bit of a compulsion there as well. Let me see. So the thing about did I see choose? Yeah, choose on clothes and objects. Now, chewing, oral sensory seeking, that's called, is actually, this sounds weird to say, but it's something I like to see because it's if you have a kid who's very heavy oral sensory seeking, that's a real strong avenue. You can get some very positive sensory input because the most sensitive proprioceptor, remember that term proprioception I said at the beginning? The most sensitive one you have is right here. So your TMJs, your temporal mandibular joint, because you need very carefully refined bite pressure. So you need to be able to bite through something soft and not break your teeth, but you also need to be able to chew hard enough to chew through steak and tough foods as well. So you have a very finely tuned proprioceptor that has a direct line into your brain. So when you have a child who's chewing, especially chewing clothing, some of them, I guess, chew their hair or chew clothes or chew pens or paper or anything, that's a really intense sensation. And the good thing about it is there's lots of functional ways to get that. It's quiet. It doesn't bother other people and can be a real good way of getting strong sensory input into them at home and in the classroom. So it's not something, that's a great one to talk about, this idea of compartmentalizing. You don't want them to stop chewing everything, but you want to get them chewing the right things. So you'll have chewables, these little necklaces and pencil toppers and things that are made for kids who are sensory seeking to chew on. But also you have lots of snacks and what you call sensory lunch boxes. Even things like, it's my daughter's one here. No, she took it with her, but you'll get like sports water bottles that have like a chewy top on them. They have to bite quite hard to drink from. Then you have really cold and even like fizzy water inside. There's even more stronger mouthfeel. So that's the idea of like remember I mentioned before, his sensory cup. So he's trying to fill his oral sensory cup and you give him lots of better ways to keep it filled up. Then he'll tend to reduce his impulse to engage in those other things himself. All right.
And so, Adam, that's what you do when you do the diet. So a diet would be, we don't allow them to get so hungry, because imagine if you get so hungry, how much you eat. So we don't allow them to get so hungry for the sensory before we give it to them, right? So giving it to them like intervals during the day really helps before it becomes too.
It can confuse people sometimes. This idea, even the wording of sensory diet. Some people kind of think about, is it just about foods and what he's eating? No, the diet just means the sensory experiences he's going to have throughout the day. But using the metaphor of food's a good idea. Like if you think about, okay, how often do I need to do this? Think about like food. Like you wouldn't let your child go 3 days without eating anything. Same sensory wise. If you don't give them something sensory to chew on, figuratively speaking, they're going to try and eat the world around them. It's like if you hadn't fed your child in a week and brought him to a sweet shop, he's going to devastate the place. He's going to eat everything. So it's the same idea. You want to keep his sensory system, give it the like nutrition it needs, and that way it reduces his compulsion to eat everything. Dee Dee, I think you've got your microphone on, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Dee Dee. Let me see. What have we got next? He said, oh, yes. Danagal, my son, 12 years. He's hitting head too much every minute. It's a sensory issue. Or he needs something else. Please advise. Okay. He's 12 years old. So quite a lot going on with that in all likelihood. So by all means, by the way, anyone I speak to here, I'm going to give Asma my contact details, and you guys can find me on the YouTube channel, on our Instagram or our Facebook. Feel free to message me any of these questions afterwards if I didn't get to you, because I get these a lot. With a YouTube channel, I get about 20 of these a day, but I do try and respond to all of them, because usually a little bit of support, and I have a lot of resources for these things too, and I can give you all of those for free. So for a child who's hitting his head, sometimes that can be almost two opposite reasons. It's weird to say they're opposite, but they are. You can have a child who is seeking sensation. So he's doing it because it needs to be something that intense for him to feel it. Like the volume in his word is turned down. If he's a broadly sensory seeking boy and now he's hitting his head, but he's not super upset, That's our boy who needs a lot of really intense proprioceptive and vestibular sensory input. He needs the nuclear option, really strong, heavy work, lots of proprioceptive work, lots of it, especially at his age too. He's getting bigger and stronger. His sensory needs, his hunger is now, he's ravenous for sensory input. But if he's doing it when he's really upset, if it's a self-soothing mechanism, then we have to address that differently. Maybe he's hyper. Sometimes you'll get this if you have a kid who's hypersensitive, and actually you think, okay, why is he doing this if he's sensitive? It's because this acts like almost like a white noise machine. So he can't feel a sensation that's bothering him because this is so strong. It like goes over the top of it. For my lady back in Ireland who was doing that, that's what that was. This was her coping mechanism when the world was too loud and too much for her. She'd punch herself in the face. So for the young person who is doing that, you look at, like the ABAs would say, look at the functions of behavior. What happens before he's doing it, while he's doing it, and then afterwards. Okay, how is he doing it in the same times all every day? Is he doing it more when he's tired or anxious? And then think, okay, how can I replace this? So if it's a sensory seeking thing, you can do lots of deep pressure touch, and you can actually do it. He can do them to himself as well. Even squeezy things. It's a program called the Sensory Star program I'm a big fan of. These little exercises you do, they're isometric, so you tense all your muscles. It's quite a strong physical thing. And then relax. You want to try and get his body to calm down, then his brain will follow suit. So that's the idea. But
Adam, this brings me to what when you said sometimes the friction you have between you and the ABA therapist. So sometimes an ABA therapist might think this is behavior. Probably, like you said, check what's happening. Maybe it started as sensory. Now, when he starts to hit his head, no mother wants to see her son hitting her head. So she comes running. Now you want something. Now it becomes an attention seeking.
Yeah, 100%. Can be an escape too. Yeah, that's where you need to look at the function of behavior. So we can definitely, I have kids who do that. Like I have a kid who's their trump card right now, because normally you like ignore things. You're like, okay, I have a child who's done that before and they tried to hit themselves, but they wouldn't really hurt themselves that much, but they knew how much they could do it. And their new escape behavior is they poo themselves. Like, you can't really ignore that. So, but kids are so clever at working out, okay, you are that nice try. Let's see what other cards I have to play here. So that's why you look at the function of behavior. But if it is a sensory basis to it, so look when he's doing it, that's usually the dead giveaway. In fact, I don't know. Can I share my screen here?
Please. Yeah.
Am I? I can. Okay. I'm going to show you just one page real quick, guys, on this exact note. So let me show you. So if you have a look at this, I think, did I just share it? There we go. So this website here, it's called Your Therapy Source, and there's a checklist. It's a sensory versus behaviors checklist that I usually give this to teachers, in fact, and it will have things like what happened before, what was the context that occurred, and it's a great way just to write down and just lay out any new behavior or any new. When I say behavior, I just mean something the child does, even if it's a sensory behavior, and then what you can do to support it, and then reflections afterwards. So it's on Your Therapy Source. You just put in your email address and they send it to your email address. It's a sensory versus behavior checklist. And that's really helpful for laying out and trying to explore some of these and get to the bottom of, is this a sensory thing or is it a behavior thing? Or in all likelihood, is it both? And then how do you overcome that? One of the things I just wanted to mention about if it's sensory as a behavior, one of the things you'll see done wrong an awful lot, unfortunately, by OTs is a lot of OTs don't like ABA for that. They think, oh, it's all sensory. It's a sensory solution to it. So they'll see a child who is engaging in like some like sensory, it looks objective like a sensory behavior, but he's doing it to escape an activity. And then the therapist or the school shadow or LSA will go, oh, he needs sensory input. And they leave the thing he's doing, give them a sensory input, but you're actually reinforcing why he did it. So you're reinforcing the behavior. So the thing to be very careful of, even if you're doing sensory approaches, is don't forget about common sense behavioral techniques. Don't allow him to escape something. The main thing is don't inadvertently reinforce a behavior you do not want to see continue in the future. Because how you respond to anything will increase the likelihood of that becoming the new normal. So just be a little wary about that, because OT, we do, unfortunately, a lot of OTs, they almost don't even want to think about behavior, common sense behavioral things, and kids will pick up on that really, really fast. Okay, guys, let me have a look back in the questions.
I think our next one is a comment, but the other one is about switching off lights before he's able to sleep, from Hafsatu Bawa.
Switch on the light before he's able to sleep. I recently noticed him putting his hands on his eyes some 2 hours before sleep. What do you think of this? Yeah, okay. Again, that's something that definitely started as a sensory behavior. I'd say it probably quickly became a compulsion. So I'm question about that I would ask is, does he always do it if you change the context? If you went to a hotel, would he do it in the hotel, or does he only do it in his own room? So is it specific? You want to be able to compartmentalize that. So sometimes you can have a child who does something like that, and then it will actually increase, like OCD type behaviors almost. The child washes their hands, then they wash them 10 times, 20 times. So it escalates, because there's the difficulty with that is you don't get to like, I would say, there's no like resolution to it. There's no point where he goes, oh, that's enough, now I'm feeling calm. It'll always not quite feel like enough. So you want to be able to have a really good, strong bedtime routine. I can help you with that. There is another great resource for very, very much for this young person, for the sounds of it. You'll go to a website called, or even Google, called Whole Child Therapies. They're based in Harley Street in London, and they created this document about sensory sleep strategies. And it basically goes from like 3 hours before bedtime, 2 hours before bedtime, 1 hour before bedtime, and then how to keep the child sleeping throughout the night with all these sensory approaches. It's amazing. And it was a game changer for lots of my families. Have a look. I think it's still available online. If you look for just a PDF, alter your search just to say PDF, Whole Child Therapies are called. If not, what I'll do is I'll WhatsApp the document to you, Asma, and you can send it to anyone in your group. So, but that's a really good one, because you'll find the specific thing that's bothersome to him, and then you want to provide a even better bedtime routine than what he's trying to engage in there. So it's like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. Let me help you out. Let's try this instead. And that will be a positive experience for them. And the kids really, really like it. So it's lovely. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me see. I have one here as well. I get a lot. So from Halima, he screams when a clipper is that the second part of something I missed? I'll jump in there anyway. From Halima, he screams when a clipper is being used to cut his hair. I guess it's the vibration. He insists on being held tightly during car rides. I know he's seeking deep pressure touch. Yeah, he for sure is seeking deep pressure touch. So you'll have different things for clippers and scissors for hair cutting. Some kids prefer one, some kids prefer the other. Some of my guys really like the experience of the clippers. The trick is to become, it's that idea, like the foodie thing, it's becoming okay with it and becoming think, okay, reduce his stress response when he sees it. Like, for example, it's the same way I do if I have someone coming in who's afraid of spiders. I do this as well. So you get them to look at a picture of a spider, then be in a room with a spider, then hold on to like a plastic spider, and then eventually be in a room with a live spider. And then you build it up like that. So you're trying to get their body accustomed so they can do all these things and their brain doesn't go, oh my gosh, they don't go to the fight or flight response. So what for the clippers, for example, I would have him have the clippers, find a way to do that with something else. For example, if you have like a teddy or something, you can put the long ends on them so they don't actually cut the teddy bear's fur, but then let him hold them, let him become accustomed to them. Put the back end of the clippers without the blades on the TMJs, so in the proprioceptors there, let him get used to the vibrations around the jaw, and then do a little bit, let him do a little bit on dad's hair. Yeah, dad's, this is a perfect time for you guys to step up. Dad's hair, dad's beard, and then he eventually going to do a little bit in his hair. Make sure he can see, make sure the mirror is right there, and you do a little bit, then more, and then gradually increase it. The one thing I'll say don't do, and I have to say I have some dads who have done this quite a lot, is if you have a child who struggles with that, don't make it a routine that once every 2 months you hold them down and shave his blooming head. This happens all the time. I have so many families who do this, and it's a nightmare. Do not do that, because there comes a time he's still having a stress response to this. It's almost like PTSD. There will come a time where he is 16 years old and you're not able to do that. And there's going to be one occasion that's going to be a fun time. It'll be a changing day in both your lives. So no, do that. There's ways around it. You don't have to pick. You want to pick your battles. Okay. So
From Halima
Yes, we got.
Bello, she wants to know about deep pressure. Anyway, you have 7 more minutes, Adam. So let's say.
Oh my goodness, I've got loads of questions. Okay. Let me see. My son's obsessed with, yeah, my son is obsessed with screens. He do not like doing other things. He gets violent when he stops. He always replays all the things said and done in the videos he watches. Yeah. This is par for the course in this day and age, I'm afraid, because people have busy lives and you have lots of other responsibilities. And one of the most effective babysitters and shadows and pseudo medications is screens, because you pop a screen in front of a lot of our guys and it's the one thing that will make them calm down and zone out. But it is not a good long-term strategy. So screens are not the worst thing in the world. So I've done radio shows and articles all about this. The problem with screens is they're very, very addictive and they are not very easy to put down. It's like the birthday cake thing, that your child will never start eating a birthday cake and then go, oh, thank you, that's enough for me. I don't want any more tasty thing. This is screens or birthday cake for the brain. So it's not that neurologically stimulating in the way we want. And it's also going to fill them up so they won't want any of the good nutrition of development, any of the good sensory things. So the kids who spend hours and hours on screens, the one problem with their sensory needs is they were totally passive and they didn't do anything physical. They didn't do anything other than engage with the screen. So having screen time routines, I would keep screens entirely away. This is a bit of a big one. Families might not like me for this. I would keep screens not even remotely close to 2 hours before bedtime. They're very stimulating and alert.
Yeah.
So especially if you have a child who has trouble settling at nighttime, if they're having screens in front of their face before they go to bed, anything else you do will not work after that point. You've got to solve for that first, okay? And the screen time's tricky because I know the kids don't want to give them up. So it's more, okay, you have to have really, really, really strong boundaries in place where it's just not available. It's not seen at all over that time. Use timers, use now and next, so we get our screen time after we do this work. And then when it's finished, it's finished. But as soon as it's finished, you go on to another fun thing. Maybe it's something like a snack time or something like that. So you want to try and break that cycle. The one thing, this is pure behavior, but it's worth saying, is when you set boundaries, please stick to them. So if you're saying to your child, screen time's finished, thank you, and take it away. If he goes, no, no matter what he does, do not give him that screen back. So he will go for every tool he has, every card he has to play. He might hit himself. He might do anything like that. But if you give it back to him at that point, you've just taught him this is how you get it back in the future. So if he's hitting himself, he's screaming, if you give it back to him, you rewarded that behavior. So really careful about that. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth fighting that particular battle when they're young, because when they're older, it gets even trickier.
Yeah, Adam, the acronym that has really helped me, even though it was hard at the beginning, the CCF that a doctor once told me, said, be constant, consistent, and firm, and you've won the game.
100%.
Anything less than that would not work. It has to be all three together.
The reason that works, and you could actually use that when you're talking not even about parenting, but even about teaching at tabletop or doing any new activity, because the one thing that helps an awful lot, which is always beneficial, is it lets the young person know where they stand. It gives them clarity of expectation. So there's not any surprises. They don't feel blindsided. They know, okay, this structure is in place. That's why, like, the term they used to use is called grandmothering, like grannies being kind but firm. And that is really good. That's why, grannies have a lot to learn from grannies sometimes, because that approach is really beneficial. And then you can even have, like, you'll see classrooms. I go to an awful lot of classrooms. And when you see a teacher who does that well, they make teaching look easy, because every child knows what's required of them. They know what is appropriate. They know what the teacher will stand for and what they will not stand for. And then they just go along with that. If you have a teacher who is doesn't have those skills yet, maybe they're younger, maybe they don't have the confidence and they haven't made their students know what the expectation is, then it looks like, oh goodness, I would not want to be a teacher in a million years. They make it look like the hardest job in the world. So good people who do this well, make it look easy. It's not easy, but it's not complicated as well. It's a term I use a lot. It's simple, not easy. Straightforward, but not easy to do all the time though. Okay, good. But yeah, very nice. Let me see. How do you get a child 8 years old to stop pressing items against their genitals? Apologies, but I get this a lot. He's also started chewing things, including shoes. So yeah, it's a type of self-stimulating behavior. So, and the problem with that is it's the nuclear option for self-stimulating behavior. So when you have a kid who is engaging anything new, it's because they were exploring and stumbled upon something that was like, oh, this is new. This is interesting. I want to keep doing this for a while. So it's more, you want to adapt the environment to reduce his access. So he's not able to put his hands down his pants, for example, and he's not able to, like, he doesn't go there straight away. That's not his first thought. So having something to keep his hands busy, having whole body pressure as well. So using something like a weighted vest or using something that provides a deep pressure touch, like a body sock or a compression garment or something like that, will also keep that sensory cup filled up. So the problem is if he's getting sensory seeking, if he needs a sensory input, that's a really immediate one. Like the grinding teeth, very intense sensation. Do anything in the bathing suit area in the genitals, that's also a very intense sensation. This is a really big issue when they get to puberty, and there's really good resources for that as well. Like a whole other talk I do about puberty, and you want to address it pretty quickly because it very, very quickly becomes a habit because it's so intrinsically motivating. He's going to get such a kick out of doing it, then he will want to do it all the time. So you want to be able to boundary that, reduce his access, and then like, what do you call it? Compartmentalize it. So provide another way to get that deep pressure sensation in a functional way. All right.
Adam, it's 3 o'clock. You still have time, just to give you a heads up of your time.
Oh, yes. I must go now in a second. Let me see. Is there anything else I want to jump out with real quick? Oh, yeah. You have my details there. 960. Oh, yeah. Asma's just got my mobile number up there. WhatsApp is by far and away the easiest way to reach me. Or also do please, I have this Adam the OT YouTube channel, and every week I post up videos of activities you can do in home. The majority of them are for kind of kids in the spectrum because that's my main caseload really. But also the last, I'd say since May, they've all been videos in response to questions that parents have had. So if you have something you're struggling with or an activity you want to see, a skill you want to develop, let me know in the comments in the videos or message me directly, and then I will try and do a video just for you because it gives me lots of ideas as well to do videos for. So there's I think we have about like 41 videos up there now, and I'm happy to do ones for you guys as well. Okie dokie. Sorry guys, there's loads of questions I never got to. I do apologize. I have to.
Adam, can you type in your YouTube, because I saw a lot of videos yesterday. I love that.
Yeah. In fact, I'll do one better. Let me.
Yeah.
And
Adam, can we please have you back so that we can discuss the puberty aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually.
So
I'm putting together because I have there's like a training they've asked me to do for that for a company in the US. And I've put together like a resource pack, which is everything that is remotely available anywhere online about puberty. So I have them all in one file, and I can kind of point people in the right direction because there's great resources there. And it's weird because it was a training program that's really needed, and no one would let me do it. None of the clinics I work with would let me do that training. I did it in Ireland before, but then I don't know if anyone here is in Dubai has been to it. So one of the moms I work with a lot, called April McCabe, runs Autism Mom Dubai. And she decided, well, Adam, if no one will let you do it, come to my house and do it in my front room. And then I had 37 parents come along from Afghanistan and Pakistan, Dubai and Saudi and all over, flew in to do this one coffee morning. And it was just me. But it was spectacularly good because these families really needed some guidance because they were totally lost. And
was it the one at April's house? Not the one at April's, right? Was it?
The one in April's house, and then we did a couple more online as well, but but they're really, really, really cool. Let me very quickly, guys, I'm just going to bring up the YouTube channel.
We badly need this because there's so much hush regarding puberty issues, but then we can't deal with them. We need people like you to tell us exactly.
Guys, if you have a look now, so this is, if you look on YouTube, it's called Adam OT on YouTube. Just Google that and you'll see all the videos there. That's my daughters and some of them. So you see that, but there's a whole bunch of them for fine motor skills and sensory skills and all sorts of things. Okay, okay.
Please take advantage of these. Please, super people, take advantage of this, because I mean, your questions might just be answered, and view it, like it, share it, because this is the only way, I mean, Adam will feel more motivated. And then leave comments, whatever you want Adam to, you know, come up with.
Please do. And do you know what, guys? You could actually do me a favor. I'm very happy to come. I love doing these. I do these a lot. And I prefer doing these kind of talks than the radio sort of stuff, because I love getting the questions and like connecting with families a lot. Because one of the things you guys can help me with is the YouTube channel has become relatively popular, especially with therapists in the US and Canada and UK, South Africa, Holland, and these countries. But the one thing, it's lots and lots of views for OTs, because I can see where they're coming from, but it's not connecting. It hasn't reached parents because I'm not in as many parent groups. So if you guys see a video you like, feel free to share it in any like parent Facebook groups or any groups, WhatsApps or anything like that, and encourage other parents, because it's that feedback and other parents being able to access it. That's why I did it in the first place. But I want it to be as available for parents as it is for therapists. So you guys help me an awful lot in kind of getting the word out there on that side of things. Okay.
True. One last thing, Adam. So if someone has, you know, because we talk generally here, you really did an awesome job in trying to, you know, answer the questions and everything, but every child is unique. We all know that. So if a parent wants to reach out to you for a consultation or something, can you be able to assess the child, or can you send her some forms to fill, like a sensory checklist?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot. I have quite a lot of those now, actually, on from families in, where do I have? Kenya, South Africa, Pakistan. I have a load in Pakistan, and from families who've got in touch with me, and we'll do a proper OT consult. But the majority of my work right now is teletherapy, so it's sessions like this. It's what I would do then is provide the family with a little sensory assessment, because no one knows a child better than they do. It's great if I can see them and over the camera as well, but it's mostly gathering information from the parents, getting their sensory profile, and then being able to educate the family on how to provide what that child needs themselves at home, or if they have help at home, if they have an LSA or a therapist there in their own country, I can kind of train them, provide them guidance as well. So that's been lovely, because it's being able to reach families from all over. Although it is weird, because I have one family in Colorado that I see at 1 a.m. because that's the only time that they can work, because it's so far away. So my daily schedule is all over the place, but no, parents can absolutely access me for like a clinical consultations and things like that, because it's a little support. Even like those families, they'll do a consult, maybe have 1 or 2 sessions for the first few weeks, but then reduce it to 1 session every 2 weeks or 1 session a month, just to check in and provide new resources and examples and training. And then they feel a lot more confident in their own ability to support their own child. But yeah, it's a lovely thing. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. And so also videos would help. If maybe you're not able to see the child doing what he's doing, because our kids are all over the place. If there's a behavior, or if there's a challenge, a sensory challenge that the parent feels, then she can just take short videos and then upload it, and then you discuss it, right? You give feedback and stuff like that.
100%. And the main thing is, don't feel like there is no new problems. I'm very, very rarely surprised anymore. So anything you feel, the frustration comes in, it's not if you have a child who has big behaviors. It's not if your child is struggling. That's not where people get frustrated, teachers or therapists included. I want people to reach out if they feel like they don't know what to do for the best. They're not quite sure how to support their child. Because if you have a plan and you know what to do, then everything else seems easy. Even if it's a tricky case, as long as you know how to respond and you know what you can do to help this young person, then everything becomes 1,000 times easier. And that's what I can help an awful lot with. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
And for everybody to know, can you open your mics and say thank you, Adam, because I just reached out to Adam maybe just 2 days ago, probably. Can we all unmute? I still don't know how to unmute.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for the
Thank
questions,
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Adam. Thank you. Okay, well, allow Adam to go now because he has a session now.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, everyone, thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. I'm really showing up. I appreciate, I mean, anything that will make us grow together is what I love doing. You know me. I do what I love and I love what I do. So please, I love the thank yous, but you will not thank me enough if you don't put what you've learned into action. Would you do that? Would you? Can I hold you accountable to at least start doing something? Did you get something from the film session today?
Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
Something at least
yeah.
Definitely.
and he has generally given us his number. He normally doesn't. You know, he prefers emails and all that, but I'm telling him that we are busy parents. I mean, emails are just for us. So put him a WhatsApp, consult with him. Oh, I think I'm echoing. Can we mute, please? I know, I asked us to unmute. Yeah. So, I mean, just reach out to him and directly. You don't have to do it through me unless there's some problems or something. Thank you so much for the feedback and take care of yourselves and see you next week.
Thank you.